This crew over here, the side crew, come up closer. Don't want to try and fit in with the juniors and seniors. Come up closer. Arvin. Yep, come up closer. Okay, let's take a seat, guys, because we're gonna begin. Hello. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us, esteemed faculty members, students, and distinguished guests. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the second lecture in our faculty lecture series at eWorld School of the Arts. Today, we have the distinct privilege of hosting an accomplished and visionary artist, Dr. Veronica Fazio. Dr. Fazio is a mixed media interdisciplinary installation artist with a deep engagement in sculpture, social sculpture, performance, textiles, photography, and video. Her work explores transformation, non-human participation, post-human philosophy, and gender, all entwined with autobiographical memories. She has exhibited and presented her work in various countries, including Argentina, Italy, Norway, the United Kingdom, Germany, Mexico, and the United States. Dr. Fazio holds a PhD in visual arts, contemporary practices from the University of Plymouth, which she received in 2021, and an MFA from the Miami International University of Art and Design. Her education began in Buenos Aires, where she earned a degree in photography and audiovisual techniques at EDAF, along with a fine arts teaching degree with a focus on sculpture. Today, we have the unique opportunity to delve into the world of Dr. Veronica Fazio's thought-provoking, innovative, and transformative art. Her work is a reflection of her boundless creativities, her engagement with contemporary issues, and her remarkable ability to inspire us all. And I'm certain that her lecture will be enlightening and captivating experience. Additionally, I invite you to join us for our next lecture, so this is for you guys to mark it down, by Dean Gustavo Plasencia on November 2nd. Please mark your calendars for another enriching experience. But for now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Veronica Fazio to this platform.
Okay, so here we start. The presentation is a little bit long. I promise you we will be done as soon as possible. But I want to cover so many things. I want to cover, of course, my artwork and my research, my artistic research. But I cannot do that if I don't tell you a little bit of my life in Buenos Aires, where all started. So that's me, right? And those are all the names I go by. So, and Marina Follis is coming up, is my next name. So we have Veronica Marina Faz. Every time you see those names, is me, right? And some of them, like Marina Well, usually I use that one when I curate shows. Photography is more Veronica Fazio. All together is Veronica Marina Fazio Well. And Marina Follis will be for my next body of work that most likely will be about cooking as an artistic process and walking. that is coming up. So let's go back in time, and this was inspired by Santa Cristo's presentation. She's showing her first picture, the telephone she used. That's my telephone because I did high school during the 80s, right? So I went to a fine arts school, the program was very close to the New Orleans School of the Arts. Escuela Nacional de Bellas Artes Rogelio Urrutia, back then was national, now it's not national anymore, I guess. I got that picture from the internet. And so back then in Argentina, high school was 5 years. It started in what is equivalent here to 8th grade, that is first grade high school. So you have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 years high school. And the school was only for fine arts, plastic arts as we call, no visual arts, plastic arts. And I emphasize this because this will come up during my research. Why I like to call it plastic arts instead of visual arts. Because not everything is visual in our practice, but everything has plasticity, everything changes, and plasticity is the main element of a sculpture. And I see the world through the eyes of a sculpture. That's why I emphasize my art is plastic arts. But it has to be also with my past, because in Argentina, even the art class in elementary school is called actividades plásticas, plastic activities. That is art class. Practic activities is craft. So we separate plastic from craft, and that's very interesting because all that comes back during my research. So that's my Walkman. I find a picture of what was my Walkman, which actually I have to share with my brothers, so I have many fights over that Walkman. Cassettes, yes. Pink Floyd, many of you will say, but Pink Floyd is from the 60s and 70s. Yes, but in the 80s in Argentina, we were 20 years behind. So everything that happened in the United States during the 60s was super cool during the 80s in Buenos Aires. But I also heard things from the 80s because I have very cool brothers that were on top of everything. I think Santa Cristo already spoke about the slides and the slide projectors that went all through your time too, right? Yes. Okay, so that's my school. It seems smaller now. We grow older and we see everything as smaller. Okay, so that was the 80s, right? 5 years in fine art schools, plastic arts. My favorite class was sculpture. One more thing. We went to school from 1 to 5 was everybody together for the regular high school. From 8 to 12:30, 50% of the students were doing art Monday through Friday. The other 50% from 6 to 10, 11 p.m. We all get together from 1 to 5, right? So actually it was a very intense program. I was a morning student, so I was 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, 5 years. But it paid off because back then, now it's no longer like that, but not back then, this school, Rogelio Urrutia, used to give you, at the end of all this process, used to give us 2 certificates. One was the regular high school, and the other one was Maestro Nacional de Bellas Artes, which means that we could teach. So at 18 years old, I was teaching in elementary school. That's why sometimes I say I have 28 years of experience, and people look at me, 28, how can that be? Well, I started teaching art at 18 years old. So I was 18, and I was teaching 7th graders that were 5 years younger than me. Some of them were taller than me. I had moms as a student, because of course, when you start, you go to the suburban area, so you really get to work with tough situations, but that's not part of this presentation. That is another research. Okay, one more thing about the 80s, and I moved to the 90s. I was born in 1972. In 1976, the military took over the country. We saw people disappearing I think they calculate 30,000. For the United States, 30,000 is not that much, but back then Argentina had only 25 million people, so it was a lot of people. Our militaries killed more of us than Pinochet in Chile. So, in 1982, we lost the War of Malvinas, Falklands, and because of that, the militaries left the power and we get back democracy. So when I started high school in 1984, I started high school contemporary with the fact that we were recovering democracy. That was a thing in the visual arts school because most of my classmates had family members that disappeared. I have a situation that is not part of this presentation, but we all felt that very oppressive years very close. So we were all very politicized. We always got together to the music school and the dance school, and we were in every single strike and protest, etc., which comes back in years later. In the 90s, when I finished my fine arts school and I started working as a teacher, I moved to photography. In Buenos Aires, during the early 90s, there was not photography classes in the visual arts programs. Photography was only given by the journalists school. So I went and I started looking around and taking classes here and there, but I was an animal from another, how do you say it? I didn't fit with the journalists. They look at me like, that's not narrative, you are not telling anything with that weird picture. Okay, so I was going, taking classes, giving it up, and in between, I start traveling the world. And I have to go fast to do that so I get to my research. The first stop in 1992, I went to my grandmother's town in the Alps, and my mom's town. I am daughter of immigrants, and now my son is the son of an immigrant. So we are immigrants from many generations. So I went to the Alps. I met my mom's family. I saw my ancestors' tombs. I talked to them in the cemeteries, and that's where, from there, I traveled all Europe, except England. During the 90s, Argentinians were not allowed to get into England because of Falklands War. So England should not be in the map, but I did every single museum with my boyfriend then that did the plastic arts school with me, right? Which now is a very good artist, Gaston Persico. So we went to every single museum that we could in Europe. We traveled all Europe by land on trains. Back to Argentina, save money, teaching art in elementary school, by land from Buenos Aires to the north part of Ecuador. I went to every single native temple. Back then was not commercial like now, no tourists were traveling South America. Sendero Luminoso was still in certain provincias of Peru, was dangerous. Peru had cholera. We got the map of how to travel from the father of a friend of ours that was an archaeologist professor in one university, and I had the amazing luck of knowing all these places before they became more tourist spots. So I did Argentina from Buenos Aires to Bolivia, all Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, and then came back from the Pacific, Chile, back to Buenos Aires. Took 1 million pictures, they are there. I couldn't get everything for this presentation, but photography was still my main focus. Back to Argentina, didn't like it, back to Europe. In this time in Europe, and I have, it's all black and white imaginary. It's not all Europe, it's only in Napoli, in Italy, where I lived a couple of years in a squat. Yes, I was a squatter. We occupied buildings, abandoned buildings from the city, which were amazing. They were old, they had the walls were this thick. And back to my roots of going to the protests and the strikes in Buenos Aires, I became the photographer of all the protests, protests and strikes in Napoli, in South Italy. I also taught the university students how to do photography. I opened up a dark room. We moved from squad to squad. We used to see, like, I don't know, for example, Sonic Youth was playing in Milan. We were all going to see Sonic Youth. Of course, we didn't pay the train tickets. We jumped into the train and all those things. Until I got tired of Europe and I came back to Argentina in 1997. I should have stayed here for a little while. I said, I don't want to travel anymore. I felt tired. I was 25. Now I cannot believe it, how I felt older then than I feel now. That's it. I'm going to stay in Argentina, not going anywhere. So I went back to Buenos Aires, bought my apartment, back to elementary school, and did the career of photographers. I'm in a journalist school in which I felt miserable. But I did it, I finished, I got my degree. In 1999, my brother took me to Africa. And we traveled through many countries in South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia, by land, on tents. Again, taking pictures, this time color pictures. Of course, we are still in the film era. And I did photography. I finished photography in 1999, when photography almost officially closed up the analog department everywhere in the world. Everything was becoming digital, and I felt I got a degree that was completely obsolete. Then it's a subject of a different research how I ended up in the United States. It was the last country I want to put my feet on during my lifetime. But I came here for a familiar situation. I have to get here with my mom because she was looking for my little sister that fell in love with an American. So I was saving money to go to Greece, and I ended up here in the United States, came to Miami to visit friends, stayed with my friends during the Argentinian summer, which is December, January, February. In March, I was going back to Argentina to my school to keep teaching art, and I fell in love with someone. And I stayed with him. He was from Boston. And I was, not only I am in the United States, I'm dating an American. It was like, how can I explain that to myself, to my old self, right? I was, of course, transforming my life. In 2004, I got admitted to do my master's degree at the same, exactly how Ms. Santa Cristo says, at the Miami International University of Art and Design. I start my master's. And I was working I went back to sculpture, which was my Escuela de Bellas Artes in Buenos Aires, right? I went back to sculpture, and I went back to, I have an amazing group of mentors there. Kerry Ware, Carlos de Villasante, John Massengel. They mentored me, and they put everything together, and this bridge that I have between photography and sculpture finally came together in the form of installations. Let's see. I will show you very, very fast. What is it? What do I do here?
Yes.
So, this is part of my body of work from my master degree. I did pieces in ceramics, I did pieces in plaster, fabrics. The figurative one is not from that program, it's there, it's a mistake. So basically, I developed a body of work that was very abstract, but and I was into discovering with the materials what each material could do, and what what each material could not do. So I spoke in my thesis about entering into a dialogue with the materials. The dialogue was my manipulation of them, and I didn't want to push them. I want to understand what they want from me. And I start to link in all this process of making art to my early childhood when I lived with my nonna and we used to cook pasta. So to me, touching clay, making stuff with clay, it was like, in a way, it was not remembering particular situations, but doing the same gesture as I was doing with my nonna, with my mother's mother, during my childhood. So there is when I start wondering about materials and, of course, formal issues of materials and dialogue with the materials. How do I go back to the PowerPoint here? Okay. So that's my master's, right? When I finished my master's, I went back to the Art Center South Florida and I continued working with the same idea of the materials, but this time I moved to stitching, fabrics, fibers, and let me see if I can go here. I started developing these beings that in my imagination they were having dialogues to each other. Not only the material was having a dialogue with me, but they were having dialogues to each other, and that's how they got to put together an installation that I understood that they were asking me where each one of them wanted to be. So I started doing those are some examples of what I was doing, and I had them in Walgreens windows, I had them in the Ultra Music Festival from 2008, 9, and 10. Yes, 10 was the last one because then I have my son and I stopped doing this big work because I didn't have the time, neither the body to do them. But I did several ultras and the subject matter started to change. While during the master's degree body of work, everything was about material and understanding the material. There was something about emotions. That here is 100%, the concept is emotions. I want to also find forms, not only by what the material let me do, but can I find forms for emotions? Can an emotion have form? And that was my inside the studio research, which then I thought was research, and now then later on I understood was not research, but was a practice that let me understand, at least put in contact with myself and the material. Sorry if it's confused, but you will get to understand it. So then, the last body of work that I did with soft sculptures is this, which you can see how it has different editions, right? You have this in Ultra Music Festival, and then you have this in a window in Lincoln Road, and then you have it in the Arch Center. But they are all the same. They are bodhisattvas of the earth. I start practicing Buddhism, and the bodhisattvas are these beings that come from the earth looking for enlightenment. So these forms were, in a way, representing this thing that grows from the earth, looking for light, enlightenment, if you will. Or just like a plant, looking for light to live, right? More examples of ultra, but you got the idea. Let me go back to the presentation. And here we go, 2015. Okay, research. What is artistic research? First of all, I have to say that I got invited to do the artistic research, the PhD program, almost, I couldn't believe it. I was applying. Someone from my master's told me 1 day of the week you have to apply for exhibitions, you have to sit and apply for everything you can. And the rest of the week you do your artwork. And I was doing that. And I don't even remember. I came across to something related to Transart Institute, University of Plymouth, and I applied, like she told me, compulsively. And one day I received a call, you are admitted to do your PhD with Transart University of Plymouth. But I didn't really knew back then what was a PhD in arts. Because in the United States, the terminal degree in our career is master's. So I was, what is to be a PhD when you are an artist? So I thought that was very similar to be an art history PhD, an historian PhD, right? I thought, okay, you apply the scientific method, you do a research, and you are a PhD. But it didn't, how do you do that? You know, like, how do you do that being an artist? So I started going there without knowing much, and I discovered what I will try to share with you today by doing it. Number one, remember the Walgreens piece? This is the Walgreens piece with all the soft sculptures. Okay, when I did my first, one more thing about the PhD. Transart Institute is a nomadic university. So they are accredited by University of Plymouth, UK. Now they are accredited by Liverpool, it doesn't matter. They are always accredited from my university, but they don't have a building. So we used to meet in Berlin, in England, in Mexico, in New York City, in different places. So this time, the first time I go to meet these people, to show my work, I show them what I had, and after spending with them 1 month in Berlin, this is what happened.
When I started my PhD process, I aimed to transform my own practice via a rigorous and reflective research process that would lead me to a new stage in my life and my career. Looking back at this from the present, it is clear to me that this process of transformation was reflected by a shift in my practice. I developed from the object maker I was, closed away in my studio, to an object maker who performs actions in which the viewer becomes a participant and plays in an active role. I started calling my work social sculpture explorations. Joseph Beuys explains social sculpture in the following manner.
My objects are to be seen as stimulants for the transformation of the idea of sculpture or of art in general. They should provoke thoughts about what sculpture can be and how the concept of sculpting can be extended to the invisible materials used by everyone. Thinking forms, how we mold our thoughts form. Spoken forms, how we shape our thoughts into words or social sculpture, how we mold and shape the world in which we live. Sculpture as an evolutionary process. Everyone is an artist. That is why the nature of my sculpture is not fixed and finished. Processes continue in most of them. Chemical reactions, fermentations, color changes, decay, drying up, everything is in a state of change.
Joseph Beuys emphasizes the capacity of plasticity of all art disciplines in many of his interviews and talks. Plasticity refers to the adaptability of an organ to changes in its environment or differences between its various habitats. The word sculpture in social sculpture could be understood as referring to the medium of sculpture itself. The German words both used were social plastic. In German, plastic means sculpture and das Plastic means plastic arts. So I posit that for boys, the word plastic in social plastic, social sculpture, was used also for its implicit capacity for plasticity in the medium of sculpture. This is based on boys' intention of expanding the meaning of sculpture based on all its elements and capacities, especially the capacity of plasticity. Boyce explains that the objects he makes are not sculptures as merely objects, but rather stimulators for the formation of thoughts and to mold thoughts or to shape thoughts. Boyce believed that the essence of social sculpture is to shape and mold the world by working with what he called invisible materials: thoughts, words, imagination, ideas, to make new thoughts. His aim was to develop an evolutionary process to share his idea of plasticity in its entire arc, from material, medium, thinking process, and the ability humans have to be in constant process of change, to transform and to mold ourselves. I myself am the artwork at this moment. That is, it is yet to come that man itself is the work of art, and that potentially every human can participate in this realization, to make the world a work of art, a social sculpture. In my piece Colchonero, I dismantled a set of soft sculptures that I had made between 2006 and 2010. I took out the stuffing that gave volume to the fabric, skin, which I folded and stored. I did the same thing to each one of the approximately 25 pieces that made up that body of work. I left outside what was inside, and later that material became another piece. Through this action, I was not only connected to my inner need to undo my traditional work with a performative action, I also felt I was becoming more honest in my practice. I was exposing the inside material, the unseen, the hidden, that which gave volume to the sculptures so that they occupy the space with a specific form. The volume makes the form come to existence. The main material that shaped it was now outside, visible and tangible. Martin Heidegger writes in a poetic way how the piece is within the material.
But also, this much celebrated aesthetic life experience does not bypass the thinness of the artwork. Sound is in the building, wood is in the carving, color is in the painting, sound is in the spoken word, ringing is in the tonal work. Thinness is so irremovably in the artwork that we must even rather say it's the other way around. The building is in the stone, The carving is in the wood. The painting is in the color. The spoken word is in the sound. The musical work is in the tone. That's self-evident. People will counter. Certainly. But what is the self-evident thing in the work of art?
In the origin of the work of art, Martin Heidegger posits that every time we look at the thing through a specific concept, we ultimately subject the thing to violence. Even though it was evident that my soffit sculptures contained stuffing, for me, at that point, the stuffing became the thing within the piece, the core of it, the piece itself, the thingly matter that makes the thing sculpture.
It almost seems that the thingly in the artwork would be like the structure, and over which the other and the proper is built. And is it not this thingly part of the artwork that the artist properly makes by his handwork?
As I was recovering the material that I had used, I discovered its capacity to produce form that was the previous piece. The material that makes the piece is the piece. The piece cannot be without it. I experienced and discovered the importance of the unseen material and found that it was the closest to essence of the piece. The material which can be used and transformed as much as I, as an artist, could be open to work with it. Violence, in this case, to the former pieces, was also present within the performative action of undoing the soft sculptures, that is, carrying the threads and taking the stuffing out. The material that was inside the former pieces, the stuffing that I was taking out, was becoming another piece previously hidden, now exposed. But more than anything else, I was linking this action with a memory from my childhood.
After my grandfather passed away, my grandmother called the colchonero, mattress maker, to cut my grandparents' queen-size mattress in the middle to make two smaller mattresses. She also called a carpenter to make two beds from her marriage queen-size bed. But I will never forget the work of the colchonero. The inside of the mattress sat as a big pile of material in my grandmother's garage, and it stayed there for a few days while the colchonero came every day to air the stuffing and to separate and knit the two mattresses. One became my grandmother's bed and the other my bed. I was 5 years old when I saw that process. I loved that material, and above all, I thought that the cotton was just beautiful and a playful material. I was able to see the inside of the mattress and touch it. The fact that the material became a pile that was bigger than me also struck me. It was a mattress and a mountain.
My transformations, memories, and ideas became the new material of my pieces. They were the invisible material that was shaping me as an artist. At that point in my development of this new body of work, which included actions, I was making use of ideas, the invisible material of thought, and the way in which that thought becomes an idea, which is a sculpture. In the same way as when one shapes ideas and articulates words. I started to explore other artists' perceptions of my work without giving them prior information about the pieces, by asking them to look at a byproduct and express the ideas that the pieces provoked in them. The artists, therefore, became participants, and participation started to be part of my practice. The audio for the byproduct video features a recording of the group of artists' feedback.
The voices activate the space, the light illuminates the material, the movement creates rhythm, the body unifies the narrative. Okay, basically, here is when I want to show you this transition, right, between the object maker to manipulating my old objects and seeing what happened between the undoing the object, destroying the object, because once in a while I find out later that in my praxis, once in a while I destroy everything I have done before. Please document before, if you do that before, because sometimes I forget to document them and then I don't have nothing to show, but that was done. But anyways, so I want to show you this transition here. Now the transition continues, and what happened next is that I start producing art. In the beginning, being aware of the viewers become participants, and then further on, my artwork ended up being at the end of the PhD journey that my art is not for me, it's for the participants and by the participants. There was a point in which I asked myself whether I was the author of my work. So, going back, I want to show you one piece that was rejected by, well, before I go to the next piece. So, the stuff into the soft sculptures went back to Walgreens as this piece, right? This is another Walgreens here for an exhibition, but this time was the stuffing. Okay, so the next piece, the tower, I was working on the tower parallel to my PhD program, and was almost rejected by my professors, but it is still one of my favorite pieces, because it's when I really started working with participants. There was a terrorist attack in Paris, I don't remember, I think it was the editorial, where they killed a lot of artists, remember? It really affected me, and I thought a lot about the Babel Tower, in which people fight to each other, not knowing each other's language. So I also always carry with me my grandmother cookbook. So the piece is basically very simple. It's me reading my grandmother bread recipe, and I asked many friends of mine to read for me and record their family bread recipe, which I think is something that puts everybody together, right? Our grandmother cooking bread is almost everywhere, and so this is what came up. And the piece has different versions. It was exhibit for Art Basel in Lincoln Road at the Art, back then, Art Center South Florida, and I will listen. It was also there. It has many versions, but I will show you the very first one, and then I tell you a little bit about the other versions. This is no, right? Yes. Oh my gosh! How will I remember my password? I can't sure that.
Can you,
It's my favorite. You see this piece? Let me see if I. No, I don't remember my password. Let me see. Maybe I am lucky.
back to the link. Like minimize that window
okay.
just in case. And then push on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Домашний хлеб, закваска, 1 стакан цельной жирной муки, 1 стакан теплой воды. Смешать муку с водой до консистенции густой сметаны. Густому можно регулировать дополнительной добавкой воды. Полученную массу выложить в стеклянную баночку, накрыть мягким полотенцем. Оставить в температуре около 30 градусов на 72 часа для брожения. Каждый день массу регулируем. Хороший запас становится немного жирным, формирует хлеб, курятся легкий
دیگر چسبندگی نداشته باشد.
1
هم زدن خمیر
2 стакана
کمابیش 10 تا
цельной
10 دقیقه
пол стакана теплой воды.
خمیر
Закваску
برگ
добавить в
سازد.
и перемешать до
پارچه
густого
تمیزی را روی کاسه هم زد پهن کرده آن را 45 دقیقه در مکانی گرم گونه که خواهید دید خمیر نان بازی کمابیش مدت خمیر نان برگرد
и
مقدار بیشتر آرد و همچنین
Obere Seite mit Wasser bestreichen. Danach
دلیلش این است که هرچه نمک خمیر بیشتر باشد نازک‌تر و آسان‌تر خواهد بود. اندکی آرد را روی میز آشپزخانه پخش کنید.
1 столовая
خمیر را از کاسه همزن بیرون آورده و روی آرد میز بریزید. دست خود را به آرد آغشته کرده خمیر را دستکاری کنید و هر پاره آن را به شکل توپ گرد درآورده روی آرد میز بگذارید.
смешать все
پارچه
ингредиенты,
تمیزی را
mélanger
روی
la
آن
levure de
بگذارید و
boulanger
15
dans
دقیقه آن را
un peu d'eau
به خود
et
رها
de
کنید.
farine.
потом
دل
руками
را
ставить
روشن
Dans un
کنید.
salade,
دما را روی 300
mélangez la
درجه
farine et le sel.
درجه
сформировать
Ajoutez-y la levure
زمان
diluée
بهتر است
ainsi
صدها از
qu'un peu
زمان
de
بالا ریخته برای گرم
оставить
موندن
подъема на
استفاده کنید و بخش
Il
پایینی
se
دل را
peut
از
ça,
این گوش کنید
vous
و
rajoutez
با
légèrement,
سر به شکل
pétrissez votre pâte,
وقت پاره از خمیر نان را
потом смесь
با
нагреться.
قطعی
saisissez à
نمک
pleine main la
پهن کرده
pâte
و برای این کار کمی آرد
Уже
استفاده
выключен
کنید.
огонь.
avec un traitement
نچشد.
sec.
آنها را به شکل دایره به اندازه پهن کنید که پهنایشان در حرارت 3
Et
میلی
recommencez à
اگر
pétrir,
نتوانستید
puis à
هم
la
مشکلی
projeter,
پیش
ceci
می‌برد.
pendant 15
آنها
minutes.
را کمی کلوفتر آماده کنید.
Déposez la pâte en
آنگاه به
boule dans
وسیله
un plat,
جدال سوراخ‌هایی
recouvrez-la
را
d'un linge
درست
humide
کنید.
et laissez-la reposer pendant
خمیر
2 heures
پهن شده
environ.
را به
Elle
آلو
doit
برداشته
doubler de
روی
volume.
سینی تل پهن
Une
کرده
fois qu'elle a
و
bien
آلو
levé,
را جای تل
écrasez-la avec vos mains.
به دلیل نزدیکی
Formez
نان
ensuite
اگر
de petites
تل
miches de
باید
pain
مدام
ou
نان
un
را
gros
بررسی
pain,
کنید.
puis laissez à nouveau lever pendant 1h30. Préchauffez votre four à 200 degrés et déposez-y ensuite vos petites miches de pain. Faites cuire pendant 20 à 30
花
minutes.
卷馒头，
Le temps de préparation est de 2
准
minutes.
备好面粉，
Le temps de cuisson est
然
de
后
30.
加入南瓜泥、
Les
糖、
ingrédients
酵母，
700 g
把它
de
拌
farine,
匀。
30
因为南瓜的水
d'eau
分
tiède,
所以
une cuillère
呢不用加
et
水
demie à
加
café
太
de
多，
sel,
可以先搅
2
拌，
sachets de
如果
levure
不够的话再加
sèche.
点水。之后呢，揉成光滑的面团，然后进行发酵。发酵2到2.5倍大小的时候，可以用手指戳一个洞。如果它不回缩的话，面团发酵就会发得很好了。发酵好的面团拉开一面，就像海绵一样，排气分割，盐分取份揉拢。
Espere fermentar por cerca de 20 minutos. Acrescenta o óleo e a farinha de trigo e sove. Divida a massa em 3 partes iguais. Se puder, cilindre a massa. Modele os pães. Aguarde crescer. Leve ao forno pré-aquecido a 180 graus para assar por 40 minutos.
Okay. That's the piece that was almost rejected by the committee. But here in Miami, people like it. The Art Center South Florida asked me to do it. This is the other edition. In this one, I was inside a green room. The video that you just saw was projected on the window of the Art Center, and here you see this table. The table was inviting people that was walking around during Art Basel to read their own one. So everything was on a live YouTube channel, and you could see all these recipes meshing together, inclusive the one of the person reading it on Lincoln Road. So. But they didn't like it. I still don't know why. Okay, so let me see how much time we have. I want to show you, I think there are 2 more videos and then jump to the end. Because I have all the theory, but I want to go very fast so you understand the way of an artistic researcher works. Let me see a little bit of this one. This video also has yes, well, I want to say something first. Thank you. So this piece also has different versions. One was in Berlin for a festival called, I don't remember the name, but my piece name is Body in Space, and it was all about the body because the organizer, the curator, is a dancer, but also takes this, was in the same program as me, because this program doesn't separate the different fields. In this program, you are sitting next to a dancer, next to a spoken person. It's a creative practice. We are all together. We get this. You may get a professor that is a dancer, or is a dramaturg, or is a writer, but it's creative practice. That's it. That's the PhD for contemporary creative practices. So embodied space is about discovering the place where you are, and here I enter into conflict with institutions, which is also another layer of my research.
Connect with the building, South Florida Art Center, where at that time I had my studio space. And it's a space and architecture. I enacted a repetitive motion that made me dizzy and so prevented me from going fast. As I walked, I rolled my head against the walls, and I let myself be connected to the shapes and forms of that particular space. It was a performative walk that passed both outside the studio and inside and around the building. This brought me to an experience in which the environment and I connected. This performative exploration helped me to use my body as a sensory organ. I was aware of the connection of my full body with the material that made the building, and I was understanding the building using my body. Another organ of perception was explored. In embodied space, I was emerging from my closed studio work And as I went out, I found that the building that contained my studio was an institution. While
Okay, that's a complete separate chapter and it's all about the institutions and we don't have time to do it. And I think that's a little bit boring too. But you saw how those are not pieces. That's something that I want you to understand. Those, I call them byproducts. The piece is my exploration. But my exploration cannot be shown, I cannot show it to you because it's inside my mind. Remember, invisible materials. I come from the tradition of Joseph Beuys that works with invisible materials. So by molding my sculpture that is invisible, I do all these actions and I document the actions, right? And so the actions are not video art or sculptures, they are byproducts of what is really happening, which is what is happening inside, which is sculpture. Okay, this is another failure because my work is full of failures. So in this work, I work with communities of elderly in Miami Beach, and I went to visit them and I told them, okay, here am I want you to give me instructions, whatever you want me to do, just tell me and I do whatever you tell me. So they got very excited. One of them got the camera, which is the one that is filming, and they were telling me what to do, and I was following their commands, right? Which later on I realized that was crazy because you don't tell anyone that you don't know, do whatever you want with my body, right? But it was inspired by Yoko Ono cutting peace, but it didn't really work for me, so this is one of my failures. But failure is part of my methodology, which hopefully I can explain that later. But I will go very fast through this failure, which to me is anyways a nice piece. But this is them telling me what to do. Because I will be coming every Friday and every time I just go to see I pass very fast and then I explain to you what they are doing, right? Everything I'm doing, they told me to do.
This is really my first time seeing art like this.
So basically, we all have fun. They have fun, I have fun. They told me every single thing what to do. And then they were sharing with me different things that were happening with them while I was doing it. Most of them didn't want to be in front of the camera. They were behind the camera. So they shared with me all these connections that they were doing as they were telling me what to do, and everything was related to the butterfly.
Can you put the volume up? Because the mic I think is now low. Can you put the volume down over there?
Here.
Yeah. Because I think you put it lower than the video.
Okay, anyways, I finished this video. Now, hello? Hello?
Here.
So, they have an idea with the butterfly and the process of metamorphosis and the transformation of the butterfly. I was going through a transformation through my PhD because my whole concept of art was changing. The way I was working was changing. And I was amazed that they were making me do, in a very literal way, a narration of the butterfly and the transformation. And also, if you go back to Joseph Beuys, he talks constantly about transformation, metamorphosis, etc., etc. So everything was going always back to that word, metamorphosis, transformation. And then things get super philosophical. I will not step there with the less and the becoming, right? But that's for another conversation. So when I started the PhD, I thought that, like I said before, that we were going to follow a scientific method. And then that's the beginning of the PhD for artists. It started only 35 years ago in Germany and Norway. And in the beginning, they say, okay, we artists can bring to the humankind new knowledge. So we deserve to be PhDs, because that's the only thing that the PhD has of difference with an MFA. That the PhD requirement to be a doctor is that you are bringing to the humankind new knowledge. It doesn't matter if the new knowledge is as little as this. It has to be new knowledge. So, in Buddhist terms, you imagine you as a little cell of one body. The body is the human. You are one little cell. You step a little bit further and you can have a PhD because you have this little new knowledge. But that's a requirement. So when the artists started 35 years ago, it was very hard because they were all using the scientific method. But then, soon after that, they came to the realization that our method is our practice. That we can arrive to new knowledge with our practice, whether it's painting, photography, sculpture. If you come to that enlightenment, I'm sorry for my Buddhist term, but if you really understand that your practice is your method, and you take it as is, as a method, and you put it together with other elements that you use inside your studio, you will end up having a methodology. And with a methodology, you can erase new knowledge. So what is happening now in the last research society that I went in Plymouth, it happened the other way around. We artists used to go to symposiums of scientists to understand their method and how to apply their method in our studio. And now it's the other way around. The last time I went to one, I had two scientists sitting to me, and it was an artistic research symposium. And I was, what are you doing here? Well, we want to learn new methods and methodologies from artists and borrow them to the science field and see if we can discover new knowledge, but not by using new methodologies. And the only people that is using new methodologies is us, because everybody else follows this. That's the methodology for all the scientists. So that's very interesting, at least to me. So how did I write the thesis? Especially me, because I have to be honest with you, I was bad at writing in Spanish. And that is something that you transfer. When you are bad at writing in your own mother language, no matter how many languages you learn, you transfer that. And language was always my low grade. So I was, and you can tell the way I speak. I have been living here since 1999. I should speak a little bit better, right? But that has to be with my limitations with the language. I used to say in other lectures, I speak no language. When I speak English, I speak it wrong. When I speak Spanish, I speak it wrong. And also when I speak Italian, I always speak it wrong. So I speak no language. So if I got a PhD, everybody here get a PhD. In the beginning, I asked my supervisors to do the PhD in Spanish, but British don't like Spanish. They told me, go do that in Miami. Anywhere else we understand you. Well, I offered to them to translate Spanish to English. They said no, they reject the idea. Now there are people in Spain doing PhDs with native languages. So maybe you guys can do a PhD in Spanish in a few years. So how did I write this thesis? Because when you do a PhD, 50% of your degree is in writing. So I did fine arts, visual arts, now I like visual arts, all my life because I don't want to write. What are you talking about? So I was introduced to Katie McLeod, is one of these, the first people developing the idea of artists as PhDs. Katie McLeod, she wrote a lot of books about artists as researchers. And she talks about this method that at least it helped me a lot to be able to write about my work. And it's not write about my work. Writing is your work, and that is the big difference. When you write a thesis for MFA, you write about your work. When you write a thesis for a PhD, you are not writing about your work. Writing is your work. So she calls it the seesaw. So she says the way a researcher works is the following. You produce work, you stop, you write, you stop producing work and you write of your experience of producing work. And you stop, and you go back to producing work, and you stop, and you start to going up and down between writing, and you entangle writing with producing work. At the end of the 6 years or whatever time it takes you, at the end, what you don't have a body of work that is separated from the writing. You have everything entangled. And your research is the writing portion as well as the visual portion all together. That is artistic research. And of course, you have to show the new knowledge part, right? So this paragraph, I'm not going to read it, but it's there in the pictures if you want them read later. But this is about Katie McLeod explaining the seesaw. So I used the seesaw. So then it gets very theoretical, right? So I went crazy doing all these things. I took classes about mind maps as medium. So the art that we were developing was all about mind maps, right? All your ideas coming out in drawings, in arrows, in circles, in triangles. So I had to develop my own methodology. Everything was a failure. Everything. I was presenting, I was no, bad, boo, again, okay. This is just part that I found in my computer, right? And the other element was how do you come remember the seesaw? How you go from producing art to producing words, right? So I find Donald Shawn, probably American people knows him, that he invented the reflective method. The reflective method is for nurses, for people working in health, which is it's something like, okay, you go, you work, you observe, you go back to your office, you reflect, and then you plan for the next one, and you do this circle, it's called reflective practice. So I say, oh, okay, I like reflective practice. But then I thought, what is reflective? As a photographer, reflective to me is this. And I said, okay, but as a photographer, I understand that when the tree receives the sunlight, the green absorbs all the rays and rejects the green one. So we see it green, but we see the one it rejects. Same thing with the brown. So what we are seeing is the thing that is not, right? So the tree is everything but green, or the trunk is everything but brown. or your black shirt is everything but black, right? So I say, I don't reflect. Because remember, I am a strong woman that fought politically from the beginning, from 13 years old, so I don't reflect. I don't buy this illusion. I know that the tree is everything but green. So I say, what do? I diffract. I went to another term of light. What happened with light? You know, when it goes inside and going back to Pink Floyd, the dark side of the moon, in which the light, you remember the cover, whoever saw it? That's diffraction. That effect is when the light comes out in all its colors it can have. So when I am thinking about something, I try to diffract, not reflect. Diffraction also can be more easy to understand. You know when you threw a stone on the water and amazingly the water starts to make in different circles? All those circles that appear are diffraction because it's also related to the waves. And I thought I discovered the wheel. Then I find out that diffraction pedagogy is a big thing now in Europe, that a lot of new professors are using diffraction pedagogies, and philosophy is using diffraction ways of replacing reflecting with diffraction, right? I cannot say diffraction to reflect because then I will be contradicting myself, but you get what I'm saying, right? So it's a whole field, the diffraction field now. And I love it because it's like the multiplicity of the legs. Is that you don't have to be one thing. You can be many things at the same time. So when I went to my supervisors and I say, I diffract, I don't reflect, they say, yes, but it's too late in your thesis to get into diffraction. So I have to keep talking about reflection even though I know that I was diffracting. But now I can say, I am diffracting, guys. Whatever. Now I have my PhD, so I don't care. So the last, and with this I finish, I promise, yes, I have to finish. Okay, so theoria, right? One thing about, theory, that monster that comes and eats my brain, and I have to read so much, and I'm sick of reading, and I'm sick of trying to understand these abstract ideas. Look what theory is. I invite you to read it in silence. Theorizing is going back to the polis, is going back to your home. And then I did my, it's not my last body of work, but I did this work with my mother. Okay, here is a lot, and let me jump fast because the idea was to show you this video completely. But basically what happened is my mother came to Miami when I came to the realization of what theory was in reality, not only through that paragraph, but through many other researches that I was doing. And my mother was there next to me, and I say, okay, I had a very conflicted relationship with my mother when I was your high school age. And I need to prove my self-transformation through the arts. And I took it to myself. So I requested a studio in the art center, and we went there several times, and we came up with different pieces. Let me show you a little bit of each one.
And active listening as body senses that help us to be connected. In That Keeps Me Awake, Wolfson explains empathy as an element of education.
Educating our inspiration leads to self-awareness of the world. It is not only oneself that deserves such attention, but other human beings and things as well. What is crucial in this is that empathy for the other is never lost. Inspiration arises primarily from the ability to inhabit the feeling world of others. To do this, one has to learn how to enter the emotional experience of others and allow it to move in our inner world. This active listening involves a state of contemplation, in which personal responses to observations are mute and stilled. The contemplator has to become all eye, all ear, activating the inner senses, the sense of rhythm, of life, of balance, enabling the one contemplating to become one with the other, with the object of contemplation.
Okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I showed you this in the wrong order, but I explained to you why education. My mother was a teacher. So, can you hear? So my mother was a teacher. Okay, my mother was a teacher. So that's why this paragraph came this point of the video. But again, I cannot show you the entire video. So basically, I did prove, and I think I did go into the transformation that I want to prove, and I will show you two little pieces of the video. Years later, this happened in 2017. In 2021, before my Viva Voce, my dissertation, bye-bye is when you defend, I asked my mother, in her memories, what she remembers about that experience. And this is the audio that she sent me in WhatsApp.
I asked my mother to send me something about those explorations we did together. I said, is there anything you want to comment on?
Yo sentí, vestida de blanco y voz de blanco, dolorosa o alegría o tristeza o lo que sea, o la misma distancia, siempre estamos unidas por algo. Jamás el lazo entre vos y yo jamás se romperá. Porque yo soy tu mamá, vos sos mi primera hija. Y siempre, a pesar de vivir distantes, a pesar de ser distintas, de ver cosas distintas, de sentir cosas distintas, pero hay una esencia invisible que siempre nos va a unir. Eso es lo que yo sentí cuando estábamos haciendo ese trabajo, las dos juntas vestidas de blanco.
And to close it, during the body of work with my mother and with my brother, this is in Berlin also, I documented hugging her for a few minutes in a busy street next to the Congress of Berlin. I discovered that there was a presence constantly, always next to me, that was the camera. So the camera became my colleague, because in Spanish it's la cámara, I call it she my colleague. And there is another layer of how I understand objects, object-oriented ontology, or new materialism, and philosophies that have to be on the approach of giving life to the objects and the materials. And that is a big piece of my research, but I'm not talking about that today, but I want to show you the end. So we close it here. With some memory with the camera, right?
Camera presence.
I remember the preparations of each summer in my childhood. In the southern hemisphere, school finishes in December, and summer vacation is from mid-December till mid-March. Right after the holidays every year, we departed from the city of Buenos Aires to a little house in a tiny town called Santa Teresa, where we spent every summer during my childhood. The full preparations were made by my mother and my nonna. My father was in charge of the car and its camera. My father's camera, a 35mm Voigtlander, was a sacred object that rested all year in a drawer no one should ever open. No one said so, but somehow all knew. In a ceremonious yearly silent preparation, my father, after slowly gathering a cigarette holder and lighting a cigarette, prepared his camera for the year's vacation. We knew no one should get close to him nor talk to him. And we sat and cleaned all the parts. Sat the 35mm roll and placed it next to it for the next 30 days. My father's camera was a sacred object I never touched. When I turned 10, my godmother's communion gift to me was a 110mm camera, compact. The roll was a cassette with a very small negative. It used to come in 12 or 24. When I got that camera, I became the family photographer all year round.
Okay, sorry, it went too far. I had some more slides, but I know everybody has to go. I don't know if we have a few minutes for questions. We don't, right? We do?
It's 3:30.
3:30. 5 minutes?
My students have everything. I know students too, but, yeah, we can open the floor.
It's just a few minutes. We all have to go. I have to go too, but it's up to you. I promised my students it was not going to be more than 1 hour. I couldn't. And I left a couple of slides out. My bad. That's what happens when you don't practice your presentation.
Even when you practice though, it doesn't matter.
This is a discussion that is happening now. Is artistic research possible, or an artist when does artistic research is eating own shit? So that's one of the symposiums that I went. Artistic research will eat itself, and I was so sick of reading that I used all my readings to make a, ¿cómo se dice? Rachuela?
Oh, like a walkman?
Yes. Yes, I wanted to make fire with all the readings, but then I said, no, that's too aggressive. So, la rachuela, the one that the kids play, you know, like, yeah, that's right. With all my readings, all through the gallery. So if you have any questions, anyways, you see me on the hallways, you can always ask me, but if you have one question, maybe I can ask you. Yes. But a social sculpture practitioner.
practice this, modality of like social sculpture, like the idea itself? Because I know you mentioned the process of going back to your old work and sort of going into the interior of it and it becoming its work itself, and how you were entertaining the audience and the participation of the audience. But how did you arrive at that state?
Okay, social sculpture it doesn't belong to me. Social sculpture is Joseph Boyce.
Right.
So he was doing actions during the 60s. And at the same time that Andy Warhol was working in New York, Joseph Boyce was in Germany. So I was inspired by his process. I started studying what he was saying, and it was hard for me to understand. So what I did is I read what he used to read, and I also was reading a lot of Nietzsche. And Nietzsche said in one passage that don't trust any idea that doesn't come to you if you are not working at that moment. And I have this I am very active, and I started putting together ideas of Nietzsche and Joseph Boyce and came up with my own thing, but my own thing in reality, my material is my memories. If you see, I end up, after all that journey, I go back to my mother. So, I don't know how it happened, but one thing I can tell you is that it will happen. Anything can happen to your career as an artist, only if you never give up. And you don't know what it's going to be. The secret is don't give up. And another little secret that I will share with you is, and I say this in art history class, is the measure of your success has nothing to do with being represented by an art gallery, with the price of your work, whether or not you sell. Is not measured by, not even by exhibitions. The measure of the success of your work is your honesty to yourself. If you go to bed and you feel that your work was honest, like, for example, when I felt that I have to pull out the stuffing because I felt that I was lying to the viewer because the viewer couldn't see the stuffing, right? I'm not saying that this applies to every single artist, but those little things that maybe have sense only to you, and they don't have sense not even to your mentors, but to you, don't give up. Because those things that only make sense to you are the things at the bridges that will take you to somewhere else. So don't give up. And remember, the market is not the measure of your work. And if anytime you have no ideas, it's okay. It's okay to take a break. Don't take a break with guiltiness. Oh my gosh, I should be working in my studio. What I'm doing at the beach. No, take a break. Go to the beach. Walk your dog. Do something else. But put that time to come back. But when you are doing something else, don't do it. With guiltiness. No. That's all I can tell you, and you will find your own way. You will have that. I don't even know how it happened. It happened because I always came back. I'm sorry, I couldn't answer your question.
I think you answered it well enough with your own way of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.